Okay, so it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce Maureen St. Germain. Maureen is a world teacher of ascension and esoteric wisdom. She's an author of award-winning books and CDs and has traveled worldwide to give her audience teachings on mysticism, sacred geometry, and the higher self. Her current work, which has just been released, is a re-release of Beyond the Flower of Life. She's an author, musician, producer of over 15 guided meditation CDs, and she's a prolific musician, writer, and channel for spirit. Maureen, also known as the Practical Mystic, has a passion for supporting individuals in their personal expansion and spiritual awakening. She has taught in over 24 countries, including the prestigious Kripalu and Omega Institutes. Her books have been translated into 11 languages, and her bestsellers include Waking Up in 5D and Opening the Akashic Records. She has been featured on National Geographic Specials, Gaia TV, Coast to Coast, and Fade to Black. So welcome, Maureen, and thank you for being a part of this summit.
My pleasure, and it'll be so much fun. So those of you who have never seen me before, let me tell you a few more things that are very personal about me. I raised 4 sons. I worked at my day job for about 8 years before I jumped ship and went full-time into my entrepreneurial work. And all of this I started after my youngest went to college. So a good portion of my work came after my mom job. And the reason I'm telling you this is because some of you may feel like you've given up everything to be a mom. I mean, you really wanted to be a mom or a dad, but you gave up everything for this. And it's very satisfying. You got your wish, but you're also not feeling so fulfilled as a human being. And you want to be helping people besides your family. And so please know that you will, and that there will be time for all of it, and to pace yourself. So use this time to learn everything you can to get started. When one of my sons finished college, he came home and said he would be Mr. Mom for his younger brothers, while I would take my weekend or 2 every month to go teach in another city. So little by little, your family will help you. And you set the example by helping them first, and then saying, when mommy or daddy's older, I'm going to be doing even more things. So, I am so grateful that you came into our life, and you're the most important thing now. It's very important to let your kids know how important they are. And you will have regrets. Don't sweat that. Everybody makes mistakes. And on my website, I actually have tools for people to help them deal with regrets that they have had problems with. And we can talk about that later. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm eager to share whatever I can to help you.
That's an excellent message, and thank you for that. It is a juggling act for a lot of healers to balance being a healer, if that's their career or not. Maybe they have a career additionally, they have a family, and with these transformational times, with the energy feeling oppressive, compressive, feels like time's speeding up. There is a lot of fear surrounding these changes, and a fear of a lack of control, and self-care goes out the window because you've got too many things juggling. Can you tell me more about your story and how you could speak to either fear, for self-care, or lack of control in your life?
Yes, I'd love to. So as a mother of 4 young boys, I taught them how to do self-care for themselves and to help mommy make sure she had self-care time. And that wasn't always easy. I didn't hire someone to help me keep my house clean right away. But over time, I realized that gave me such peace of mind that it was a necessity. And so I built it into my budget. The other thing I did is I gave all my sons jobs, and the jobs helped the family, but they also helped themselves. So from a very early age, they were doing their own laundry, and they were helping in the kitchen. And the way I did it is I told all of them, I bring home the money, and we all participate in helping to take care of the house and keeping everything smooth. So at the end of the week, they got their allowance, not for doing jobs, but because they were part of the family. So they were entitled to their stipend because they had participated. And then we had a little clipboard. And when I had to do a job that they didn't do, and I would ask them 3 times, if they didn't do it after the third request, I would say, well, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. And a lot of times my even announcing that I was going to go ahead and do it would make them go do it, because I'm not bugging them anymore. Because as a single mom, I didn't want to be the bad guy all the time. You see, they'd spend time with their dad and do all the fun stuff. And then there was me, and I'm like the hard nose. So I felt like I wanted to push that off a little bit and not have that disciplinarian thing on me. So I would say, go get your clipboard. And on Friday, when I got paid, they got paid. And I would pay them their $5 in all quarters. Now, go back to that era with, video game parlors and all that jazz.
Mm.
Now, if I had to empty the dishwasher because they didn't, and I needed to start dinner, I would charge them 50 cents or $1 because I had to empty it. So now they've got the money in their hands and they have to give it back, which is hilarious because there's, it makes them powerful that they've got all this money. And then when they have to turn around and pay you because they didn't do their job, nobody's yelling at them. Nobody's complaining. We're just saying, well, I already did my job, so you have to pay me for this one. And it's hilarious. When I moved into a new house, my kids were accustomed to using china and silverware when they would have a snack, which is a good thing. They didn't just haul out their food and walk around with it without a plate. But I would come home and there would be all this, dishes in the family room. And I would look around and say, this isn't working. So by the third day with this going on, I said, okay, fine. I'm going to charge you guys 25 cents for every knife, fork, or plate or glass that I find in the family room, because we don't want to live like this. We want to have a nice, clean house. And because we can't tell which one of you 4 have done this, each one of you is going to pay me, $1, because there's 4 things here. So that didn't take long at all. And I'm sure the older ones were saying to the younger ones, take my plate in. You're going to take yours in, take mine in with you. That kind of stuff. But it wasn't me bugging them, you see. So that's very important, to find ways to not be, it's instill responsibility in your family without being the hard nose. It's very, very important. And if they had, if they didn't do all their jobs, let's say they didn't make their bed or they didn't do their laundry, I didn't bug them. I would simply make sure there was a path to their bed at night, so that if there were clothes on the floor, I would just push them aside so that if I had to get up in the middle of the night, I could find my way to them without stumbling. And if they wanted a slouch day, I'll call it, and they didn't want to make their bed, I didn't give them a hard time. But if they wanted to do something, go with a friend or, get on the video games or whatever it was, I would say, okay, well, go get your clipboard. Let's see where you're at on your clipboard first. So then those unimportant jobs, but that, raise the standard of living, those jobs became part of a checklist for a day that you want to do something, then you want to get caught up on all your other stuff. So there was no penalty if you didn't make your bed every day, but you couldn't go or do anything if your bed wasn't made. It was kind of a nice, yummy way for them to learn. Now, one of my sons said one day when he asked if he could go to his friend's house, and I did the clipboard thing. Well, where's your clipboard? Let's go check. He looked at me and he kind of frowned, and he looked at his brothers and he said, she said yes, but she meant no. That same son is a lieutenant commander in the Navy.
Sounds like he learned his lessons. Yeah.
I think he figured it out.
Yeah.
So and that's something else I want to share. This is the same son that was always in trouble. And I want to share this with parents. This is a manifestation technique that I used because I was really scared. As a parent, I was a single parent, and I was really scared that I would fail or that he would fail. And so I had this mental visualization that I used, and I'm going to share it with you. And this is something you can do. If you have a child that's in trouble all the time and you're at your wit's end and you're trying really hard, and you don't know what to do, one of the things I recommend is to give them some power but also responsibility with it by making their own decisions. So if they didn't do their laundry, then they were, you know, dirty clothes. And what really blew me away back in the day, if they didn't iron certain things, they looked pretty crappy, you know, their shirts or whatever that they would wear to school. And one day, one of my sons showed me a spray that he had bought with his own allowance money that pushes the wrinkles out of your clothes. So he never did iron them, never did fold them, you know, and that's the laundry would just sit in a pile in their bedroom. But I refused to get into it or make it my drama. It's only their drama. So here's my prayer. Every time I would worry, and sometimes it was 3 or 4 times a day for this one, you know, son that was always in trouble, I would imagine that I was in the future and that I was getting a phone call from him. And he would call me from someplace, not home. He wasn't at home. So that's the first thing. I'm not supporting him. And he would tell me about some adventure he had done, or something he was doing with his work. And I would listen and I would say, honey, you sound so happy. And he would say, yeah, I really am. And I can hardly tell you this without getting all verklempt. And I would say, I am so happy that you are so happy. And as a parent, when I would get scared, and I did, this is the mental movie I made for myself. Now, I wrote a whole book on this called Be a Genie. And the book is very funny because I tell all these funny stories in it about myself and about my family situation. But I also tell you how hard it was. I tell you, you know, my husband filed bankruptcy while we were still married. And what that did to me was make me have a choice. And my choices were to file bankruptcy at the same time as him, or, and probably with him since we were still married. We weren't living together at that point, but we were still, you know, tied. Or I could pay his debt. Now, I knew I would be teaching manifestation, and I did not want to file bankruptcy. I felt that that would be my calling card to be able to not file bankruptcy. It took me 7 years to pay off that debt, but I did it. So I'm not telling you should do that, by the way. There's no law against filing bankruptcy. And please don't think that I'm expecting you to do that. If you're at the place where you're at your end of your rope and you don't know what to do and you're being advised to file bankruptcy, meditate on it, pray on it, whatever, and then make your decision. These are tough times that we're in. So, you know, what's interesting is everybody gets it. And my first husband was a lovely human being, but he was very cross and very angry because of all the things he didn't do for himself in our relationship, and how he didn't want to make a decision that would be a wrong decision. So I ended up making a lot of decisions. And in hindsight, I found out that he resented that. And I didn't know that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, you know, stepped up and helped him out that way. So you told me one.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but so sometimes when you make decisions out of fear, it isn't the best decision. How did you know that not going bankrupt was the best decision for you? Was there a feeling, like an intuition about it?
No, I did not know that. That's a good question. I'm really glad you asked that. And we should talk about fear. So come back to that fear thing first. But I had an opinion about filing bankruptcy. You know, and when I first got divorced, I was so ashamed because I was raised Catholic, and none of my siblings were divorced. And I thought I was committing the crime of the century. So, you know, there was a lot of shame, not so much fear, but shame. And as far as the debt goes, I did not know what I was going to do. I did not know how to do it. But I also knew that humans are good manifestors, and I knew I could be a good manifester. So I focused on manifesting everything I needed so that I could step up and pay that debt. And what's very interesting is my ex-husband knew that I was paying the debt and that I didn't file bankruptcy. And he benefited because the house was still in the loan for the house was still in our joint name. So it looked like he was making good on something. So his credit got restored much faster than it would have been without that. And the nicest thing that I found out is he told me many years later that when he got married a second time, he paid off his wife's debt that she had. So even though he couldn't pay ours or felt that he couldn't, he chose to pay hers because he could at that point. And so he understood how important it was for a woman to not feel devastated financially. And that's really important for you, each of you as you listen. Do not let money devastate you. There are so many good things that are coming down the pike for every one of us that you are going to be fine. Financially, you are going to be fine. And the most important thing you want to do is find something that makes you really, really happy. Now, when I first got divorced, I was so disillusioned with life and so sad that my marriage was ending that I asked my guides what I could do that would help me get over my depression. And they told me to go look at sunsets. So every night I would drive my car to a spot where I could see the sunset and watch the sunset. And I did that for 6-7 months. And it really helps you lift your depression. Now, years later, I came across a study that said looking at the sunset actually helps people get out of their depression because psychologically we know there's another one tomorrow. So that's a little tiny tool you can use if you're really, really scared. Now, fear is a big problem because there's energy in the reality. As a mystic, I can tell you, there's energy in the reality that lives on fear. So it isn't just your fear. What happens is you feel your fear and then you hook in to the fear that's in consciousness. And that, it's like a terrible cycle that you're now hanging on to that fear. And then you get afraid of your fear. So it's this domino thing that starts to happen. So the number one thing to do when you have fear is to say out loud, I am really scared, but you energetically talking to the fear, don't scare me. And I will get through this somehow. Then the second thing you want to do is if you have fear that returns on a regular basis, to close your eyes and ask the fear to tell you what is its message. And I'll give you an example. In that cycle, when I was really broke and barely I was actually going under a little bit each month, I had an electric bill and I just fell into fear big time. And it was $50. And I remember thinking logically, this makes no sense. Why am I so freaked out over this bill? And I closed my eyes and talked to the fear. Now think of a little cartoon, kind of a grungy guy talking to you, okay? Let that fear take a voice. It doesn't have to take a shape, but let it take a voice. And when you close your eyes and ask, I feel the fear, what is your message? The message is usually that you're out of integrity. So in my case, I had been in a store a week earlier and I'd bought this cute outfit that was $50. It was perfect color, perfect size. Everything was perfect. It was on sale, half price. There was no reason to not buy it, except that I didn't really have that kind of money, but I did. And I was shown a picture of that outfit. And then I was shown a picture of the electric bill side by side. And when I asked the question, what am I afraid of? And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm out of integrity with myself because I keep saying I want to get solvent and then I want to pay the bills, but I don't act like it. So at that point, I made a budget for myself, a very simple proactive step. So sometimes you don't even know you're doing something to sabotage yourself until you kind of sit back, feel the fear, like it's a little kid that's all dirty that needs a bath. And you allow the fear to speak to you and tell you. And when you do that, now what I now believe is fear, like these little satellites that orbit around us, and they're helping us to be the good people that we really want to be. And when we're out of integrity, it's like at your doorstep, like the FedEx guy, they keep coming back.
So, wow, very powerful learning lessons here. So what I hear you say is fear is energy, like fear of money. Money's just energy. And it's a catalyst for us to kind of step into our power. Would you agree? Because not only did you step into your power with the fear of money and not going bankrupt, you enabled your ex-husband to step into his power, perhaps, and he did the same thing. So you paid it forward. And how powerful was that?
Right. So I help myself and somebody else. That's right. What I know is that if you make up your mind that you can do something, you can do it. I'm always amazed at how much we can accomplish if we would give ourselves permission to be that powerful. A lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to be that powerful. And that's why, for example, my free gift, Make Your Year a Good One, is so wonderful, because that meditation, it's a guided meditation, and it's, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe, not very long. So you can fit it into your day. It came together because I had a client who was afraid of everything. She'd come out of a horrible marriage. The father of her little girl was abusive verbally, and she was afraid that she would run out of creative ideas. She was afraid she would get fired again. She was afraid that she would run out of money. She actually had gone to the grocery store and tried to buy diapers, and the credit card declined her debit card because she was short funds. You know, those are so demeaning and humiliating experiences. So I said, okay, well, let's write down everything that you're afraid of. And we had about 27 things. And then I said, okay, I'm going to come back to you tomorrow with all the antidotes to those. Just like we use in medicine, we use antidotes for certain things. We use syrup of ipecac if a child needs to empty their stomach. And so these are antidotes that undo that thought. So when I got started on it, I got a text from her, and she said, I thought of 3 more things. So here's what happens. When you have a lot of fear in your world, and some of it you don't even know, until you start thinking about it, write down every one of your fears. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of money. I'm afraid I'll never find love again. I'm afraid I'm a lousy mom. I'm afraid I'm going to get fired from my job. I'm afraid my new business, my new entrepreneurial business will fail. I'm afraid I'm not a good enough healer. All of it. Write every single thing down until you can't think of another thing, and then set it aside. And then over the next 24 hours, if there's anything you forgot, it'll come up. Now, what I first want to explain is these things sit right here in your field, and they cloud your ability to think, they cloud your ability to judge, and they fill you with fear because they're trying to get your attention. Talk, because you're not acting on it. Once you write them all out, you validated them, because writing something down validates it. Okay, so you've wrote down all your fears. That's step 1. Step 2 is you write an antidote for each one of them. Now, the antidotes are usually come after you've gotten all the fears out of the way. Your heart begins to open up, your mind begins to open up, and it's easier to find the answers. But in this case, I wrote all the antidotes. And so there's like 30 affirmations. And here's one of them to give you an idea. I am a woman of substance. What I do matters in the world. I am paid well by clients who love me and benefit from my work. I wonder how I started making so much money.
Amazing.
And so you have these wonderful statements that you can play and repeat after me if you want. It's set up so you can repeat after me, or you can just listen. I like to have people repeat after me out loud if you have the the space, like you're in your car or you're someplace where you walking the dog or something, and you can just say it out loud. Do it. If you can't say it out loud, then repeat after me in your thought. But what you will find is that once you clear out all your fears and validate them by putting them in a little journal, and then you write the antidotes for each one, it's like I finally accepted all those FedEx packages that were trying to help me be a better person.
That's amazing. So do you have any that's specific to healers that are looking to step out into their power by becoming self-employed and opening up their own business?
I do have a lot of ideas. I worked because I had a big system and family, and I had kids in college and everything. I stayed with my corporate job for 8 years, and I'll tell you, I've got fired like 5 or 6 times in all my jobs. And whenever you work in certain kinds of business, you are serving at the whim of the board or, you know, a CEO who wants certain things happen a certain way. And I was always very, what's the word I want? Letter of the law. I have learned to mellow out. But for example, I almost got fired because I had asked an assistant if she would run a set of labels for me. And it was like 600 labels. It was a project, you know, it would take her an hour or 2 hours to do. And I was going to have these volunteers come in on a certain day, and they were going to help me put labels on the newsletter that was going to go out for my nonprofit. And we set everything up. She agreed to do it. And I never reminded her. It never occurred to me that she wouldn't keep her word. But what happened is she set me up because she also worked for the CEO. And she said to the CEO, Maureen asked me where the labels were that she needs for tomorrow's, you know, the volunteers that are coming in. And I don't have time to do it because I have to do this, this, and this for you. Okay. Now, I could have said this to her 3 weeks earlier. I could have mentioned to her boss, by the way, I've asked Susie to do this job and it's going to take her a couple hours. Please make sure she has time to do that. And then the boss would have been reminding her as well, instead of me being the doofus, assuming that if she says yes, she'll do it, that she would do it. And that was the biggest surprise for me as a professional, that because I keep my word, I assumed everybody else did. And that was a big surprise. And part of it is people forget, you know, people make mistakes. You know, I forgot about our interview, for example, today, but your email to me reminding me helped me remember, oh yeah, we're going to do that. It wasn't like I didn't want to. It's just that, you know, I forgot to put it on my calendar because I knew my Saturday was clear. And so I just said, okay, great, I have time, I'll do it. And never once thinking, you better put it on your calendar because if you don't, you're going to forget about it, which I did. Now, this is how we are. We tend to assume that whatever we're good at, everybody else is good at. And that was my biggest mistake. So the other thing is I would remind you to say to people when you're working with them or with your clients, you know, how do you feel about this? Are you okay with this? Will this work for you? So I never ask anybody to do anything anymore. Even my staff that are, you know, or that love me, I don't just tell them, do this by this date. I'll say, will it work for you? Can you manage this? Are you able to do it? Because sometimes they can't. And if you don't give them room to tell you, they won't tell you. They just, you know, suffer through it. And it really paid off because earlier this year, one of my staff members' husbands died unexpectedly. And she was a key person in my organization. And everyone, including me, chipped in to take a chunk of her job. And we all continue to move forward at our normal speed, almost normal speed, without her. Now, none of us want to do that for a long time, but we did it for the 5 weeks she was out. And we did it because we love her, and we did it because we love what we're doing. And so that's the other thing. If you know someone that everyone loves, and you think to yourself, they don't love me like that, then look at that person and say to yourself, what do they have? What did they do that I don't do? Just ask yourself that question. And I did that also in my early career because I knew that I was really a focused person, you know, on a mission. I'm going to get all these things done. And yet there were certain people like on my board that everyone loved. Everyone just loved those people. And so in my meditations, I would ask, what does Judy have that I need? You know, and there were certain qualities that she had, you know, a certain kind of patience, a certain grace. And those are qualities I adopted. I had to teach myself to pull back a little, not be so in everyone's face all the time.
Which can be tough to do. So
Especially if you are the kind of person that's going to be an entrepreneur anyway, because you are the person that's going to get things done.
right. Can we go back to that colleague that let you down? And can you speak to forgiveness? would you say there's a power in forgiveness? And because you had mentioned talking to your clients about how do you feel about this, and how does this, how does this resonate with you? Would you say forgiveness is a important piece to that?
Well, I'm going to take you way out on a limb here and tell you that the Course in Miracles says forgiveness is not required. And I will tell you why I believe that that statement is true. When we forgive, we've put it out there that we're better than the other person. So when my husband does stuff that I don't like and I say, please don't do that, and he says, I'm sorry, I'll say, don't tell me you're sorry. Tell me you'll do it differently. Tell me you'll be different. Now I'm going to give you a really benign example. And this happened to me. I'm walking down the aisle in the airplane after coming back from the restroom. Somebody's got their legs out in front of you, right? And you go to step over it, but instead of stepping over, you trip. Okay. Now, I could see that it was there. It was an obstacle that I had to navigate around, but I still tripped. Is it his fault or mine? It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you okay? So when you do something that causes someone else pain, discomfort, emotional pain, physical pain, number one question to ask isn't, I didn't do it, or I'm sorry, but are you okay? And when my kids were little, if something happened, one of them fell or whatever, I taught them the first thing to ask about anytime somebody's down, are you okay? Are you okay? Because that validates the other person. Saying I'm sorry might give them a temporary feeling of, well, I'm better than you. I wouldn't have done that. But the truth is, that still makes me in my own ego trip. And I'm about teaching myself and others how to be equals. And if we're all equal in our hearts, we're all, we have all potential. We're all different, but we're all equal. You can look at a dozen different rose bushes. You might like some more than others, but they're all equal. They're all rose bushes. So as humans, a humanity, we're all equal. And so when you are angry with someone, when you are disappointed with someone, and I had a client recently that said to me, we tried to trace down her anger, and it went back to high school, where she was a fabulous musician. She'd played a role in her junior year, and in her senior year, they decided to do the whole play. And she assumed that she would get the same part, and she didn't. And and I said, it was political, right? And she said, yeah. And I said, I had that happen to me. I got passed over for a very important situation. I was the best, baton twirler, but the head of band boosters had a daughter. And so she became head majorette, it happens. So there's two things going on here. Number one, can I have compassion for the adult that's caught between a hard place, a rock and a hard place? Or do I expect the adult to be perfect? And as a child, we tend to expect adults to be perfect. And I remember thinking as a child or as a teenager, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to be an adult because I don't want to be finished. I want to keep growing all my life because my immature version of an adult was that they were finished. They were an adult. They were finished, like a car is finished, you purchase it. So I said to my client, she said, yeah, but I have such a high integrity, and I knew what she could have done. And you, as our listener, you may feel the same way. And the answer is, yeah, well, if you have so much high integrity, can you move some of that integrity into a place of compassion? And can you say, I'm a woman of so much integrity that I can have compassion when everybody else can't step up to my standard? That's pretty hard to do, but that would be the ideal. So as even though you've asked me about forgiveness, and a lot of people think forgiveness is necessary or that they need to forgive people, my opinion is we need to step up and decide that we don't need forgiveness because we're all human and we all make mistakes and we all need support from one another. And when I expect you to tell me you're sorry, I have said that I'm better than you and you screwed up and I wouldn't have done that. And so, you know, in my world, forgiveness is not required. And even when, you know, when I had a tough time with my first husband, I never judged him. I was angry at some of the stuff he did that was hurtful to me, like showing up late to pick up the kids or not giving them meals when, you know, when they were out with him, and then he'd come home hungry, you know, stuff like that. But I never judged him for doing what he did, because he was doing the best he could. And I knew that. And I knew he was a good man in general. And even the people that you know are, I'll call them, you know, on the dark side, all they have to do is change their mind. You know, we live in a world where I believe Source is very forgiving and does not judge us for our screw ups, and instead wants us to keep trying. You know, one of the masters that I work with, his name is El Moria, and he says, I don't care if you fall down. I just want to know if you're going to get back up again.
So if we're equals, we don't need forgiveness. That's a powerful lesson.
Yeah, powerful concept.
Thank you for sharing that.
So, and I have lots and lots of tools that I use to help people. Now, I'm one of those people that my mind was always moving at 100 miles an hour. I could not settle down to meditate, but I knew it was important. So I began using guided meditations. And one day I said to my sister, I love this content from this one teacher, but I will never listen to it again because she has such a terrible voice. And it was so hard to listen to her with her scratchy voice that I just, you know, I said, look, I love the content, but I will never listen to this again. And my sister, being a sister, said to me, and I first have to say, so as I'm complaining, right? I said, I could have done a better job than that. And how many times have you said that to yourself, right? Or to somebody who will listen? I could have done a better job. And you know what my sister said? What's stopping you? And that's when I made my first guided meditation.
Amazing.
And, you know, I've made all of them. I was a music major in college, so I had the skills to write the background music. I learned how to work the software so I could do my own mixing. And as a scratchy startup, I did everything myself. And I taught myself what I didn't know how to do. Now, just to be fair, I was still afraid lots of times. And I can remember when I finally got around to saving up enough money to buy a laptop so I could travel with my data and, you know, what I needed. And it took me 6 months to take it out of the box because I was so afraid of it. So, you know, I may look very accomplished today, but, you know, I went through the same fears you probably are going through, and you can get there. And you just have to ask for help. And that's the number one thing people don't realize. We have angels, we have guides, we have ascended masters, we have dragons. We have so many beings that want to help us, that are here to help us. So when you're late or you're trying to get something done, call on the dragons. The dragons are very good at helping you make it to your destination. Before we started this call, I was telling Peter, I was looking across the way at the bridge. That's my window view. And it was like at a standstill. So I called on the dragons and asked them to please help all the, you know, I'm really worried about the truckers. I want them to deliver to my stores, right? So, you know, I want the trucks and the cars and everybody to get where they need to go. And now it's moving. And when I'm stuck in traffic, I do ask. And here's how I ask. I say, I'm calling in my dragons to help me and all the people around me get where they need to go with grace and ease, and to start making this traffic move. And one of my friends was in a class with his wife, and he overheard his wife and I talking about the dragons. And he said to himself, that's it. I'm going to try this. He didn't really believe us, but he thought he'd give it a shot. And he had one of those horrible New England commutes. And if you've ever driven the roads in New England, you know what I'm talking about, because the roads are tiny and they're curvy. And there's all kinds of other roads coming into them and other people trying to pull in front of you. So he called in the dragons to help him get to his job. And he said it was the nicest commute he had ever taken. People stopped and let him in. Other people made sure he had plenty of space. And all these little, I'll call them selfish acts that he used to experience turned into acts of generosity and sweetness. And he wrote me an email and he said, I'm going to ask the dragons to do the driving when I go to work every day. And that's another thing we do. When we get in our car, we say, let's let the dragons do the driving, because dragons have the ability to smooth all that out, because they're all about clarity and making things work. So that also means you can call on the dragons when you have a report to do and you don't know where to start, or you have a conversation that you need to have with your boss or at a client, and it's going to be difficult. You're kind of scared. You can say, I'm asking my dragons to step in and help me do this job with grace and ease. When you need help with, stuff that needs to happen. Oh, by the way, there is a tiny little guided meditation on my website. I think it's like $2.99, and it's calling your dragons, and you can learn about getting a dragon and calling it a name. But even if you don't know any of that, you can still do what I just did and just say, I'm calling in my dragons to help, or I'm going to let the dragons take over the driving. And they love to be of service. They are elementals like the gnomes and the fairies and the elves, but they have free will. So they will tell you a little bit about themselves, and you might get to see what they look like. They'll give you their name, things like that. Now, I was going to go somewhere and explain, the angels. The angels have this incredible ability to help us with our relationships, raising our children, doing our job better, finding things, all kinds of stuff. And I have a couple of guided angel meditations on my website that are very nice. Again, I say some words, and then there's a space for you to do your part. And you either copy what I say or you modify what I say for you. And that's why it's set up that way. So it's very personal. So why do you call it? And again, you don't even have to have the CD, the meditations. You can say a prayer to the angels simply by saying, I'm calling in my angels to help me with blah, 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 fixing dinner, getting the kids to bed tonight, helping me with my sick child, whatever it is. If you don't ask for help, it doesn't come, because the angels are obliged to honor free will, and we have free will on this planet. And so we need to ask. And when you ask, the help is forthcoming. And the difference between your angels and your guides is pretty straightforward, but I'd like to help you understand. Angels are direct messengers from God. They carry God energy, and they help create miracles. So when you need a miracle, you call on the angels. Their job is to help you to feel how much God loves you. And they do that with these little miracles. The ascended masters and the saints, all those, people that were human on the planet and now are on the other side helping us, those beings are guides. And they're like teachers that can teach us and help us. So if you don't know how to do something, you can ask for one of the masters who knows about music, or one of the masters who knows about math, or whatever it is you need. Very important that you ask, because that help is forthcoming if you will ask. And I know I would not have accomplished all that I've accomplished without the help of these beings, these great beings of light.
Yeah, because they can't overcome your free will, so you must ask for their help. Yeah.
You can even ask your crystals. And I know, Peter, you have some really powerful crystals. You sit down at your computer and you pick up a crystal and you hold it, okay? And the strength of the crystal, what it's supposed to do. This is lepidolite. It's actually purplish. And it's about love. Help me to be more loving. Help me to be more loving about this drama that I'm involved in. Help me to handle this drama in a more loving way.
Excellent. And you mentioned some tools that you have. Could you tell me about the Orion disc?
Okay, this is the Orion disc, okay? And it's made from aventurine. And aventurine itself has lots of yummy qualities. But it's this one, this disc is a power tool because it helps you with everything. It's charged up with certain vibrational data sets that help people to do a number of things. Number one, if you tend to be very direct and you are likely to tell someone off, or you're likely to say directly how you feel and that no one's ready to hear it, this will help soften it. And at the same time, if you're shy and you get stepped on a lot, this helps you step up and say, not anymore, but in a loving, sweet way. So it's very, very powerful for your sovereignty. Another thing that this disc does, which is amazing, is it gives you stamina. And when I started wearing it, my Qigong exercise went up about 10%, meaning I was able to stretch more, I was able to get into it easier, and I was able to maintain the practice better. And finally, if you are into meditation or spiritual practices like I am, you will find that it improves your connection in your meditations. So when Vibrant's company first put this out, I held it to my ear and I said, "E.T. calling home," because that's how it hit me, that it was a good tool to help us reach for the stars. And then I also have these tools. And these tools are very wonderful because, excuse me, it's a product line of essential oil blends that are for emotional healing. And each one of them has a different purpose. And they're very powerful and they are very helpful. And they help you with your clients. So if you have clients that you work with, you have a full set, you can let them choose. And it is remarkable. We've actually done scientific tests and we found out that this particular line of oils that came to me are head and shoulders above every other brand of oils. And it was the scientists that showed us why. One of them had to do with DNA rewinding, and the less resistance you have for the DNA rewinding, the better it is. And then there were other people who did blood microscopy, and they showed that the blood actually had a boost in the immune system. Other of the blends allowed the blood to start moving faster. And I'm in amazement because the way these oils came to me is I had a person who worked for me, a brilliant woman who was an aromatherapist. She worked in the legal field as a legal assistant and then decided to get a second master's in her elder years with a minor in aromatherapy. And that became her thing. And she started getting formulas in the dream time. And they came through Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was considered a master blender. If you don't know about Mary Magdalene, she was very well known for her work with oils. And we have so many stories, but this is a particularly funny one. I had a client, an attorney, who had a session on Akashic Records reading with me, and she was told in the reading that she needed to get a certain blend, and they told her the name of it. Now, for me personally, at that time, especially because I was still getting started, I was a little self-conscious about telling someone to buy one more thing after they've already paid me, right? I'm worried about that. But I got very strong message that I needed to tell her, so I did. And then when the session was over, I said, by the way, I do have that oil in stock if you want to get it now. And she said, well, I don't even believe in essential oils. I don't even think they work. And I said, fine with me. I really don't like, telling people about it in a session anyway, because I feel like I'm pushing something. And she said, well, in that case, I'm going to get it. Okay. Which was funny in itself, right? Well, she gets on a city bus here in Manhattan. And this is, long before COVID. And she says she decided to open the bottle on the bus. So she opens the bottle, she puts a little bit on her hand, warms it in her hand and puts it up to her face. And within a few seconds, the man sitting in front of her turns around and looks at her and points at her and said, "Thank you. I don't know what happened, but I feel so much better. And I know it came from you."
Wow.
That's how powerful they are. They're really, really special.
So how could we find out more about these?
So you can go to my website, MaureenSt.Germain.com. And I do have a link to where you can get these things. And I highly recommend them. When I had a really bad mold infection, because I went through a really tough time health-wise at one point in my life, I used one of these discs. And it was the first time I'd ever held these products in my hand. And I put it on my chest for about an hour. I just held it there because I was listening to another speaker. It was, at a trade show kind of a thing. Because I'm a mystic and I can see these things, I literally heard my guide say, "You have just phased up." And I kind of looked behind me and the mold didn't make the cut. So it'd be like going through a stargate to a higher vibe where me and the mold no longer communicated. And it was gone.
Amazing.
So yeah, you can get everything on my website. You can buy my books on Amazon or on my website.
And if we had more questions, how could we reach out to you?
I have an email you can call me at. It's called info@MaureenSt.Germain.com. And there's no dots in the name. So it's MaureenStGermain.com. So it's my name, MaureenSt.Germain.com. And you can also Google me. I'm pretty well known, so you can find me at just about anywhere.
Excellent. So thank you so much for your time in sharing your pearls of wisdom, and we definitely appreciate your guidance and your help.
My pleasure. I wish each and every one of you good fortune, and I claim for you and me and everyone we come in contact with, I claim a day or an evening of heaven on earth for you and everyone in your world. And so it is.
Thank you.